Hey everyone, thank you for joining. I'm Niv and this is Eli. We are both working in Cybereason, and our topic for today will be threat hunting from SolarWinds to Hafnium APT. So a little bit about us. My name is Niv, and I'm the Incident Response Practice Director at Cybereason, which means I manage incident response cases. Most of my work is around threat hunting and investigations of breach incidents of customers. Before joining Cybereason, I was a SOC and incident response manager in the Israeli Air Force.
Hey, my name is Eli. I'm a lead threat hunter and malware reverse engineer at Cybereason. I work in the private sector of the cybersecurity industry for a couple of years now. And in my free time, I like to publish articles about malware research and threat hunting.
This is the agenda for today. We will start with talking about threat hunting, what and why. Then we will deep dive into the gray area problem. We'll talk about IOCs versus IOBs, data collection and which data you need to collect in order to perform threat hunting hypothesis and how we see it in our team, and threat hunting use cases. The first one is SolarWinds supply chain attack, where we focus on IOCs, and the other one will be Proxylogon and Hafnium, where we focus on IOBs. Threat hunting. Threat hunting is about being proactive and searching for adversaries versus the old reactive approach of responding to incidents. When we do threat hunting, we will analyze telemetry data and logs, and we will look for anomalies on endpoints, process activities, connections, and so on, create IOBs, indicators of behavior, instead of the traditional IOCs, indicators of compromise, transform TTPs into tactical hunting queries. Why you should perform threat hunting? Threat actors are continuously evolving and adapting tactics and techniques to bypass security tools. And as defenders, we need to learn how to find anomalies and how to differentiate between legitimate and non-legitimate activities. Threat hunting covers the gaps that traditional security products have, and the threat hunting promises that the attacker is already in the environment. The majority of threat hunting queries' purpose is to hunt anomalies in the gray area. The gray area is the place where we observe usage of benign applications or behavior for malicious purposes. For example, scanning activities is something that sits in the gray area, since it's not 100% malicious or benign. On the one hand, attackers can use scanning to perform internal reconnaissance, so it will sit in the red area as malicious, but on the other hand, various IT tools scan the network all the time, and this type of activity is in the blue area, which is benign. As threat hunters, we see that threat actors operate in the gray area all the time, and security tools struggle to detect those activities since they don't want to create detection that has high rate of false positive rates. There are many gray areas in operating systems. Therefore, as a threat hunter, you must have extensive theoretical knowledge about how an operating system should work. IOCs versus IOBs. This is the pyramid of pain, which was first introduced in 2013 by the security professional David J. Bianco. Threat hunting can start from the traditional IOCs, such as hash values, IP addresses, and domain names. Looking for IOCs is supposed to be an easy thing to look for in EDR or APP products, and it's indicative and a great quick win to begin with. Going up the pyramid, it will become more complex and challenging to create hunting queries. We will want to focus on DTPs and attacker tools and their behavioral indicators instead of looking for static values of metadata that can be easily changed. Now, let's talk about data collection. Data collection is one of the fundamental steps in threat hunting. Our team focused mainly on endpoint telemetry, and most of our research is based on data collection from our EDR product. EDR and endpoint protection platforms show what is happening in your organization endpoints right now. These products usually have a sensor on the endpoint that monitors useful information such as running processes, loaded modules, connections, file events, user activity, registry entry, and files. These products have a built-in screen that allows you to run complex searches across all the available data. All this data is necessary for creating hunting queries based on IOBs and not only on IOCs. If you don't have an EDR or APP product, you can use free tools such as Sysmon from the SysIntel suite for Microsoft. Sysmon allows you to collect that detailed information and log it into the Windows event log on every endpoint. You can Forward all the events to a centralized log server, such as Splunk or Elastic, or to your local SIEM product. A centralized location is where you will run and build all of your hunting queries. There are many ways and best practices on how to configure system on your environment, and I really recommend following one of them. Let's talk about the methodology and how we run threat hunting in our team. We split our work into 4 main phases: create hypothesis, research, create hunting query, and last, detect and analyze. Create hypothesis. In this phase, you will choose the subject you want to focus on. You don't need to be a senior security researcher to perform threat hunting. You will need to gain access to information about TTPs and what is being used right now in the cybersecurity world. There are many useful resources that you can leverage for that. You can use OSINT to see the trends of today in the threat actors world and find the lead to start with. I recommend following security company blogs and tweets from security researchers. Sometimes these resources will be straightforward and contain IOCs and YAROs, and sometimes they have a deep dive analysis that will allow you to create IOBs and anti-queries. Research. In this phase, we gather more information about the threat, technique, or TTP. We will do a deep dive into the topic and understand how the behavior looks in our internal environment. We will do that by looking at real-life example of the investigated threat, run attacker tools, related malware samples, and so on. We will use resources such as research documents, VirusTotal, sandboxes, blogs, and Twitter for enrichment and to help you in the threat hunt. Create hunting query. After you've done some research and have some ideas to work with, you can start to build your hunting queries. On our team, we usually focus on running processes and endpoint telemetry. We study the process trees and their command lines and build several ideas for queries that can catch the malicious activities. It can also look at other datasets such as file events, registry entries, scheduled task services, and WMI events. Then we'll move to the last phase, detect and analyze. When you have some hunting queries ready to run, you can start executing them. Start with a small subset of data and see what you get. Sometimes TTPs that seem to be malicious are just normal behavior, so you'll need to review the results and tweak your queries to reduce false positives. If you have a larger dataset, you can repeat the testing and tweaking. Hunting queries need to be reevaluated and tested over time based on relevance and false positive rates. Now let's talk about the first use case of SolarWinds. The SolarWinds supply chain attack was one of the most covered cyber attacks of 2020. We'll use SolarWinds as an example of how to perform search for IOCs and find the low-hanging fruits. In December 2020, it was first reported that multiple US government agencies were breached through SolarWinds Orion software. A supply chain attack is an attack that aims to damage an organization by targeting less secure elements in the supply network. In this attack, the threat actors inserted malicious code into the legitimate updates of the Orion software, allowing them to get remote access into the victim's environment. The attack was associated with APT-29, which is allegedly related to the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. The Trojanized module dubbed Sunburst contains a vector that can download, delete, and write arbitrary files, manipulate the Windows service and registry, and more. In addition to that, the CIA reported on malware dubbed Teardrop, a memory-only dropper that decrypts and executes the Cobalt Strike framework. Overall, SolarWinds stated that 18,000 of its 33,000 Orion customers were affected by this intrusion. Following the outbreak reports related to SolarWinds, our team collected information that helped us to hunt for this attack in our customers' environments. Using open source intelligence, we learned about the attack chain of SolarWinds and where we should focus our efforts. Also, because of the widespread coverage from the cybersecurity industry, various blogs and researchers quickly shared a list of IOCs. By reading all these resources, we started to build a structure of how we want to execute this threat and operation. First, we start with scoping. We want to find all machines that might be impacted by this operation. We looked for all machines or servers that running SolarWinds product. We can achieve that by running different queries, looking for processes or DLLs with indicative strings, such as SolarWinds or Orion Business Layer, which will find us files on the disk filtered by metadata such as product name, company name, and signature. Second, most of the published blog contained IOCs for Trojanized DLL. So we searched for the existence of the Trojanized version of the SolarWinds module. In this way, we could find a number of customers that did have a Trojanized module installed in their environment by simply using SHA-256. In this case, we have a very indicative domain which was used by threat actors to perform DGA, AVS VM Cloud. By reviewing network log data, we could observe old connections to this domain by reviewing IP subnets to understand their meaning. To summarize, SolarWinds supply chain attack is a very sophisticated and complex attack that stayed under the radar for a very long time. Using traditional analyses, we could simply scope all machines that might be affected. In this image, we can see that the HFT module, SolarWinds Orion Core business layer, that was compromised in the supply chain attack and had the Sunburst vector in it. The module was loaded into the process SolarWinds business layer host and performed the connection to the command and control. In contrast to the SolarWinds case, we want to present another high-profile incident that will demonstrate the power of IOPs and threat hunting. As you can guess from the title, it's the Proxylogon exploitation, which first observed in use of the Hafnium threat actors. We will also show how our internal team reacts from the moment of initial publication of this incident till the end of the investigation. Eli.
Hey, so first, for those of you who are not familiar with this incident, let's start with some background. So in March 2021, Microsoft announced the existence of multiple zero-day vulnerabilities, collectively referred as Proxylogon, in the Exchange Server on-premise product, along with the urgent security update to mitigate further exploitation. Security vendors, including Cybereason, observed evidence of a wide range of threat actors that have exploited these vulnerabilities, including APT groups such as APT41, APT27, and Hafnium. In addition, other threat actors have been observed attempting to deploy ransomware payloads on affected infrastructures. So reports estimated that the array of this attack, collectively known as the Hafnium APT attack, affected at least 30,000 organizations across the United States, including significant number of small businesses as towns, cities, and local governments. Due to the large number of these threat actors exploiting the Proxylogon vulnerabilities, a number of different web shell payloads have been emerged. And the most common observed one was the China Chopper web shell, which multiple Chinese APT groups have already used in several years now. So let's start with scoping. Our first goal was to scope all the machines or servers that have involved in this incident. So after we learned the capabilities of these vulnerabilities, we knew that we had to react quick. So our hypothesis was that some of our customers is already compromised by this vulnerability and by the Hafnium threat actor. So this vulnerability could be exploited on the Exchange server. So we had to start by searching all the Microsoft Exchange servers in our customer base. This can be achieved by looking for machines or services with Exchange processes or services installed. So in this slide, we can see two examples of scoping queries. One, searching for the MX Exchange related services, and the other for the MX Exchange related processes. Once we found these services or processes, we could correlate them to a certain machine. So next, from OSINT, the open source intelligence, we saw that the threat actors are using the IIS worker process or w3wp.exe, which is the web component of the Exchange email server. So we looked for all the w3wp execution on those servers, and we started to look for anomalies. Searching for these anomalies can be done by reviewing command line of the IIS worker process tree, and behavior such as file creation, modification, and also external connection and more. So to focus our effort, we identified a pattern that highlighted actually in every blog post. The attacker attempted to exploit the Microsoft Exchange application pool named MS Exchange OWA app pool. So accordingly, we look for W3, WP instances that has the command line that contains the string MS Exchange OWA app pool. Next, because we knew that the threat actors are using web shells, we looked for shell child processes such as CMD and PowerShell.exe. So once we form the base for our handy queries, we discovered that indeed our hypothesis was correct. In one of the infections, we discovered an active exploitation of the Proxylogon vulnerabilities. In addition, we find the exact TTPs that have been associated with the Hafnium threat actor. As we can see from the screenshot, the actor used the China Chopper web shell stored in .aspx files with the name of outlook.en.aspx and timelogout.aspx. So web shells are a common technique used by threat actors to gain and also maintain access to inter-enterprise networks. The China Chopper web shell itself was first discovered in 2012, and despite its small size and simplicity, it is actually known to take part in various APT activities, especially in the APEC region. So after the web shell is being deployed, the threat actor can remotely access the server via a publicly accessible web service or site and start to perform actions on the compromised server under the context of the web service. So, as seen in the previous slide, cmd.exe was spawned from W3WP. The threat actors has been using different China Chopper payloads to gain access to the vulnerable Microsoft Exchange servers. So these files can be placed within the offline address book, or OAB, object via the vulnerability. So the next thing we did was to look for any suspicious file on these directories. And indeed we found many web shell files on these folders. Some had misleading names and some had just random characters. So by reviewing the process tree, we could analyze which child process of the W3WP is spawning and observe actually the full attack. In this scenario, we have seen several stages that are known to happen when a threat actor first infiltrates an environment. So we observed the several internal reconnaissance activities using the processes findstr, hostname, ping, and query. The attackers also deployed their own tool that came bundled as an archive RAR file just to evade detection. And lastly, we see the persistence mechanism using the schedule task. From this activity, we build our hunting query. We started with the W3WP process that is spawning the cmd.exe. Now that might be a little bit noisy, but if you hunt for just one network, it should be fine. So another option is to add a filter for grandchildren, for processes that can perform reconnaissance or other suspicious activity, such as net.exe, ping, task list, task kill, rar, and findstr. In addition to performing the classic reconnaissance activity, the attackers also attempted to collect information about the domain servers and the domain admins users on the on the victim's network using the net.exe processes. To hunt this activity, we look for this kind of process tree with a command line that contain group of interests such as domain admins, exchange install domain servers, enterprise domain, and so on. From this behavior, actually, we can start to build and create another hunting query. First, we will start from the W3WP process that is spawning cmd.exe. And then we will look for net.exe as the grandchildren. And eventually, this net.exe has to contain one of the aforementioned domain-related strings in its command line. Once the threat actor set its persistence, performed its internal reconnaissance, and actually set their goal, they started to move laterally. In one instance, we observed a lateral movement using the WMI command line utility, or WMIC.exe, with the command line process call create. To stay under the radar, the attackers chose the name test.bat and also psloglist.bat, which can appear legitimate. In another reconnaissance measure, the second script, psloglist.bat, objective was to run the Microsoft sysinternals tool psloglist and saved the security logs from the event viewer of the last 10 days. So the hunting query we could build for this scenario is we will search for any W3WP processes that spawn the children of cmd.exe, and then we will search for grandchildren WMIC.exe with the command line of process call create. After completing reconnaissance and lateral movement activities, the attacker executed a batch script that exfiltrated the SAM system and security registry hives on the exploited Microsoft Exchange server machine. Using this hive, the attacker could extract and actually crack the hashes for accounts that were logged into the server, and potentially compromising also administrators' credentials. Therefore, to hunt these activities, all we can do is to look for cmd.exe processes that spawn reg.exe processes, which contain the word save and also one of the aforementioned registry hives, SAM, security, and system in its command line. In another activity, we observed a threat actor executing the PowerShell script that dumps the Elsa's process. To do so, the attacker used the randll32.exe process to execute the com service DLL or com.svcs.dll with the function minidump and specify the Elsa's process ID. It then specifies also the file location of the memory dump. After extracting the registry hives, the attacker also compressed the dumped data and saved it into a cabinet file. So also to masquerade the dumped extracted content as legitimate files, the actors changed the file extension to be .png, with also a legitimate name of Microsoft Exchange server-related name. And also by reviewing the network log of this machine, we could see that the threat actor used Tor, which is another indicator of behavior that you can hunt for.
Before we finish, we want to give credit to the great team who worked with us on this project: Omri Empel, Yuval Hudi, Niv O'Connor, Ilan Sokolovsky, Matt Art, and Mo Levy. Thank you all for all of your help. To summarize, just do it. Threat hunting is a very broad and dynamic subject, and there are many ways to do it. We hope that by listening to this session, you feel encouraged to do it yourself and start creating an impact on your network. Happy hunting, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you.